specialty who are in a mixed faith. And I'm going to talk about something today when we view our spouse as being morally deficient. Let me explain what I mean by that. So I've seen mixed faith marriages where partners see as morally deficient differences. And what I mean by this is that you think the other person is wrong because of their faith choices. Therefore, they're not as righteous, they're not as worthy, they're not as smart, they're not as aware, they're not as educated, fill in the blank. And this may come across in thoughts like, how could they believe that? They broke their promise. How can they support that? How can they choose that? This type of thinking probably indicates that there's this judgment that your partner is morally deficient in some way. And it can be kind of sneaky. You might think, no, that's not my problem. But if you notice yourself thinking these things, start to look a little bit closer. Because this type of thing can be poison to a relationship. It causes partners to show up with contempt and derision, which can really undermine the strength of a relationship. And it never feels good. So I want to suggest that before engaging in real meaningful conversations about religion with your spouse or about your mixed faith marriage, that you clean this up. You take the time to clean this up. Otherwise, it's going to come up and sabotage your conversation attempts. It's going to come up and sabotage whatever bridge building attempts you try. So if you found to have conversations and they seem to go south and you've tried to reach out and you always end up saying the wrong things, it may be this. It may be you need to clean up your thinking, your judgments about your spouse and about their level of education or their choices or their faith choices. How could they believe that type of thinking? So I'm going to give you an exercise to help you do just this. It's a tool you can use when you want to have a conversation with your spouse and to help you avoid sabotage. Have a better success rate. Now, mind you, this takes practice. You're not going to be able to get this and go and have the perfect conversation, but you will have the tools to start practicing in earnest. Okay, number one piece of advice, and this is almost for any conversation, but especially a conversation you want to have about religion or your marriage in a mixed faith marriage, and that is decide how you want the conversation to end. And what I mean is, decide what you want the outcome to look like. What is the ultimate result you want to have as a result of this conversation? Is it to be more connected? Is it to express love? Is it to bring up a concern and to communicate clearly that? Is it to what, right? You need to be really clear on that so that you don't get side railed as other things may or may not happen in the course of the conversation. So maybe your full intention is to be loving and supportive. Maybe it's to seek understanding. Maybe it's to build connection. Those are all really great intentions to set and to keep focused on if you're going to engage in a conversation around your mixed faith marriage. I'll give you a little hint here. If your purpose, your intention is to change their mind, one, that's almost impossible to do, and two, they're going to feel that and it might cause the conversation to get derailed very quickly. Okay, so one, decide the outcome you want. And what's interesting is we rarely enter a conversation hoping it ends up in disconnection and fighting and frustration. But that's often where we end up, right? But I want you to decide ahead of time so that you know where you want to go so you can course correct along the way. If you start getting in the weeds here or there, or you start to get frustrated and annoyed, if you remind yourself that's not my intention here, then you know when to sort of pull the brakes, change direction, course correct. And so let me give you an approach. Way to approach this in the context of a conversation. So one of the things I love to use in my own mixed faith marriage is this statement. help me understand fill in the blank. More about fill in the blank. This is a really great soft start. I would even phrase it, I'll give you even a little bit more. This relationship is so important to me. This marriage is so important to me that I want to have a conversation about. So can you help me understand your perspective on, fill in the blank, right? This relationship, you are so important to me, and our future together is so important to me. Can you tell me more about how you feel about, right? This is a really start. And what this does is it really helps create understanding instead of convincing. The difference in a conversation when understanding is sought instead of convincing is very significant, not to be underestimated. Not to convince or be convinced. It's not to judge somebody whether they're right or wrong, but if your goal is to understand and build connection and show up as supportive and loving, this is a really great tool to use to help you do that. And if you find yourself starting to convince, or you find yourself wanting to change their mind, just come right back to this. You are so important to me. I know this isn't an easy conversation, but I'm really grateful you're willing to have it. Can you tell me more about what you feel and think about? Just really great things to just come back to time and time again in the course of the conversation. So try it out and see what happens. I will guarantee you phrases, then using the phrase, how can you believe that? I can't believe that you support, fill in the blank. Because remember, if your intention is to change their mind, you can expect some pushback. You can expect some defensiveness. You can expect some judgment in return. But if your goal is to be supportive and loving and understanding, these tools can totally help you. They're very powerful. They're very easy to use. If you need more help with this is something that you go into a conversation with really great, and like, this is going to be great. I'm going to stay supportive. I'm going to stay understanding. And you always end up derailing the conversation, or the conversation gets derailed for whatever reason. You need a life coach to help you see your blind spots, because they're there. They're there for all of us. Sometimes we need somebody to come in and help us see those things so we can really address them and fix them and create better marriage, healthier communication, and ultimately that support, that love, that connection that we all so love to enjoy and experience. Okay, wishing you the very best, and I hope you try this, and I hope you see great results from using this technique.